Atomic Heart is a very strange game. Every time it did something that left me at least temporarily impressed, it would immediately follow it up with a series of baffling design decisions which left me utterly dumbfounded. Here are 7 ways Atomic Heart drove me round the twist. The first thing I want to talk about is the game's uneven tone. Atomic Heart is, at times, able to foster a sinister and unsettling atmosphere which leaves you keen to find out more. You take control of Soviet soldier Sergei Nakayev, also known as P3, a special agent tasked by genius scientist Dmitry Sechenov with investigating why his high-tech robots have thrown off their shackles and begun killing any humans they come across. The more you explore, the more you learn about what's been going on, and you may begin to get the distinct impression that you do not know the full story, or perhaps even half of it. Combined with the huge amount of effort that's clearly been put into building out the wider world the narrative unfolds within, it creates a mysterious ambience. There are, however, a ton of occasions where developer Mundfish fails to toe the line between serious and silly, leaving the game in a bizarre no man's land tonally. There's the robot twins loads of people on the internet were obsessed with for a while, because slap a pair of boobs on anything and there will always be a select group of people who get a little too excited, and there's also a randy upgrade fridge.
How titillating! Rebellious dominant men really turn me on.
Oh, I'll turn you on, all right. Just let me at you.
What a brute! Oh, I love tough guys! I'm on fire!
There are locks you can pick which look suspiciously like a lady's tuppence, and to balance it out, they are accompanied by bushes, machinery, and probably a load of other things I didn't even notice which are shaped like wangs. None of it is clever. If you're over the age of 13 or so, none of it is very funny, and it borders on being immersion breaking. Any time I was starting to get really involved in the dark events unfolding, something desperately immature would crop up to completely take me out of the zone. Mixing the somber with the smutty certainly seems like a deliberate choice given the effort put into things like the upgrade station, but it wasn't at all the correct one. Next, we need to have a chat about combat. After a Bioshock Infinite-esque opening sequence, which to be fair is pretty good if overly long, you fly about in a car for a bit, meet a granny with a rocket launcher, and eventually find yourself in the depths of Atomic Heart's first proper area, the Vavilov complex. This is where the game settles into the familiar rhythm it will keep for the rest of its runtime, as you spend most of your time exploring, solving puzzles, and fighting wave after wave of enemies using both weapons and a selection of powers. For a time, the combat is really good fun too. You may have seen it all before in games like Bioshock or Prey more recently, or in the System Shock series if you're more aged like I am, but regardless of whether it's a tad derivative or not, and it certainly is, it can be entertaining. That's all well and good, but unlike the exploration and puzzles, which do increase in complexity over time, combat never evolves beyond its initial offering. Once you've blasted an incredible number of robots and admittedly well-designed and creepy plant people to smithereens during your time in the Vavilov complex, you've pretty much seen it all. You're essentially going to be doing that repeatedly for another 10 hours or so, facing the same enemies time after time, other than bosses and 1 or 2 new robots introduced when you arrive at the open world, except you'll be doing it against greater number of foes as you proceed to increase the difficulty. Where better games will engage through new combat challenges layered on top of existing obstacles, Atomic Heart's Neanderthalic view is that bigger is better, and so it continues to do nothing more than throw ever-expanding groups of enemies at you. By the end of the game, or indeed halfway through it, you'll be more than ready to do anything other than shoot at hordes of robots. The dialogue in Atomic Heart also frequently drove me bananas. In addition to you taking control of P3 himself, you'll also be joined on your adventure by a talking glove named Charles. Charles allows P3 to perform spectacular feats such as shooting electricity from his hands or lifting groups of enemies into the air, but that's not his most interesting feature. Charles also has a personality, which means a fair bit of Atomic Heart's runtime consists of the pair having a chinwag about what's been going on. The further I progressed, the more the duo's relationship grew on me, and I really liked the way Charles Charles would challenge P3's understanding of everything. The story throws a lot of names and scientific terms and concepts at you, and Charles's questioning of P3's worldview in turn helped me better get to grips with and question what had been happening. You may not get to that point though, or feel similarly even if you do, due to how extraordinarily abrasive P3 is for a good 2/3 of the game. Crispy critters, it was so bad I seriously considered bursting my own eardrums just for a brief reprieve. For a long time, he is perhaps the biggest see you next Tuesday of a main character I've ever encountered, especially with regards to Charles, and it was almost enough that I dropped the game entirely very soon after starting. To give you an example of just how bad it is, all of these clips are taken from the first hour or so of the game alone.
I'm pleased to hear you don't have any questions, for once.
You dickhead.
Use your glove's built-in menu.
Lousy prick. Shut the hell up, Glove. I'm trying to listen.
We need to find a way to open this armored door.
Gee, you think? Enough with the lame advice, will ya?
During the game's pivotal opening moments, which should be doing a job of immersing you in the world, you instead have to put huge effort into ignoring a potty-mouthed secret agent with all the linguistic flair of an edgy teenager. Your talking glove also has another function, which is a bit of a letdown. One aspect of Atomic Heart I was particularly intrigued by in the lead up to its release was the looting system, specifically how Charles could be used to hoover up any treasures in the immediate area. On the surface, it looked like a great idea, allowing you to suck up items like a rampaging vacuum cleaner, removing the need to spend hours searching a million cabinets, desks and lockers one by one. I understand that encouraging exploration through item gathering is something of a staple in this type of game, but spending ages rifling through various containers for the same objects over and over again has never been my bag, and so I welcomed any idea which would help alleviate some of that monotony. In practice, it's a mechanic which really doesn't work. Items you're trying to collect will get stuck with relative frequency, or it will take far longer than expected to get the job done due to a slight cooldown on the glove's animation. Mundfish also compensates for any perceived increase in looting speed by including an unreasonable number of things to search as well. The mechanic could be described as a sideways step at best, although honestly, to me, it felt like a backwards one. I'd enter a room, use my Batman detective vision to scan it, and be utterly devastated when it turned out there were 20 different things I then had to wave my hand at like an absolute maniac. I'm not convinced it's any faster than simply clicking a button. There are some great stories in the game, but too much is thrown at you in one go. Early on in Atomic Heart, you explore an exhibition while on a quest to collect 4 of a robot's missing limbs. In order to secure one of them, you're left with no choice but to battle a terrifying Pliush, a bionic horror consisting of an endoskeleton and an implanted dog brain. Once it's been defeated, you're able to have a look around, and you'll likely notice other dormant Pliush dotted around the room. If you're really paying attention, you might also note that strangely, one of them is clutching a doll. Nearby lies a chirper, basically an audio log, and listening to it, you hear a story about a puppy.
Anyway, they found a puppy by the facility gate 2 weeks ago with that doll in its mouth. Maybe it got lost, or maybe it was just abandoned. It seemed like a fine dog, but it wouldn't give up the doll. It just kept carrying it around in its mouth. We thought about using it as a guard dog, but it was just too nasty. Anyway, we ended up giving it to Pavlov. They love dogs there, and they won't hurt it. But I didn't know what to do with the doll, so I thought I might give it to your museum. I just feel too sad looking at it.
The implication being that the puppy from the recording is the Pliush in the tube, unable to let go of its favourite new toy, even in its monstrous new form. That is not the end of the story either. Later, while visiting the Maya Plisetskia Theatre, you may also come across an email from engineer D. Papkim regarding his lost puppy, a puppy which always carried around a child's doll. It's a truly fantastic bit of environmental storytelling that rewards you for taking the time to breathe in your surroundings, and there are several more tales like it dotted throughout the game. The problem, and this might not sound like a problem to some of you watching, is that there is simply too much exposition, which means there's a chance you'll get bogged down by the sheer amount of information being shared with you. There are the aforementioned chirpers, corpses which can be spoken to, emails to be read, dialogue between P3 and Charles, the many story beats. It's too much and it destroys any sense of pacing. I found myself standing around for way too long numerous times during Atomic Heart trying to get through the staggering amount of additional details presented to me around every corner. This meant that the longer I played the game, the less interested I became in paying attention to the little details, because by extension it meant spending huge chunks of time not playing. Maybe it's just me, maybe it's not, but you can without doubt have too much of a good thing. I'm not fond of open worlds to begin with, and Facility 3826 hasn't changed my mind. I was really excited to make it out of Atomic Heart's introductory area, as I'd been looking forward to seeing how its distinct visual style transitioned from narrow underground corridors to wide open spaces. I wasn't disappointed either. Whether it's the enormous statues in the distance, or the save rooms shaped like mushrooms, there are plenty of weird and wonderful sights for you to feast your eyes on. The rest of the open world is an absolute disgrace. For starters, it mostly consists of houses, offices and similar full of loot, and that's about it. The only side content are the numerous puzzle-based testing grounds spread across the map, which I enjoyed, with the rest of the expanse being quite devoid of anything interesting. Even if you do fancy exploring, it's about as fun as I'd imagine being attacked by robots shooting lasers out of their eyes in real life would be, thanks to the issues the game has with respawning enemies. Whenever you clear your path of robots, you only have a limited time before other robots will turn up to repair them, so by the time you head back, or sooner, they'll be up again and waiting for you. You feel like you're doing the same thing on repeat, and that's because you are. It feels like you're in the film Groundhog Day, but with less Bill Murray and more angry robots. In fairness, you can stop enemies from respawning for a limited time by turning off the security systems in each area, but rather than building a new mechanic to circumvent a really irritating part of your game, why not just not include the irritating bit in the first place? First-person puzzling is only fun when controls are tight. I followed Atomic Heart's development for a good 6 years prior to its release, and even with that being the case, I had no idea how big a part of the game puzzles were going to be, and I generally really enjoyed them. There are plenty for you to tackle as part of the main story, some better than others, but my favourite way they manifested was within the testing grounds. Each of them is more than worth tackling thanks to the blueprints housed within them, which allow you to craft weapons or upgrades to make you a leaner, meaner robot-killing machine. They also have a real Portal vibe to them, down to the robotic voice chattering in the background as you investigate.
Testing Ground 1's magnetic and mechanical workshop is responsible for 1. Supplying samples used in all tests and research activities. 2. Manufacturing external casings for piston type and thermal machines. 3. Regular and cylindrical surface grinding, as well as spark erosion treatment for machine parts.
The big stumbling block is that the controls really aren't very good. You do have a dodge mechanic which can be used to give you a boost when jumping between platforms, but you'll often find yourself under or overshooting things, or P3 will refuse to grab the ledge you're aiming at. It's like you're controlling a drunk toddler as you stumble around in the least graceful manner possible, desperately trying to get P3 to do exactly as he's told. If there was only the odd puzzle here and there, it wouldn't be so much of an issue, but when they're everywhere, it is agonising. To conclude, Atomic Heart drove me absolutely bananas, as it had the potential to be so much more than it is. It's a game that definitely deserves a sequel, as a follow-up with all the rough edges I've spoken about sanded down could make for something special. Even with them included, I'd say it might be worth trying if you're a fan of games like BioShock and Prey, as occasionally it does do something that will make you stand up and take notice, before immediately following that up with something which will have you sitting back down with your head in your hands. Thanks for watching the video, boys, girls and potty-mouthed secret agents. If you enjoyed the video, do consider liking, subscribing and letting me know your thoughts, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon.